Right, back with you now on the Newsfeed Late Night. The IEC has expressed its satisfaction with its readiness to hold the by-elections. Special voting through home visits and at voting stations took place for those whose applications for the special votes were approved for the 9th of December by-elections. Now, the by-elections will take place in 17 municipalities across the country with 77 candidates contesting. For more on this, I'm joined now by the IEC's Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawethu Mosery. Mawethu, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night. First and foremost, how did the special voting go today?
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. The special votes went very well today. In all the 24 wards, we had about 6,000 applicants and 2,400 of which were home visits. These were very successful. There are individuals that had applied that we did not find in their homes, but we are satisfied that we were able to reach all the 2,400 homes today, and it attests to our logistics readiness for tomorrow as well.
Yeah. And what happens to those you did not find in their homes? Do they still have an opportunity tomorrow to can still vote?
Certainly, there were those we did not find at their homes, but there are also those who had applied to come to the voting station who did not come. Those, if they arrive tomorrow at the voting station, we will still allow them to vote because they did not cast their ballots today. It is still within the prescription that they are able to vote tomorrow when they arrive at voting stations.
Now, of course, these by-elections are affecting nearly 172,000 certified voters. How do you expect the turnout will be here? How many of them are actually going to show up?
Well, as the Electoral Commission, we always plan for 100%. As much as we are aware that the voter turnout is never 100%. In fact, for local government, it is always between 30% and 60%. So we will be satisfied with any number that makes us to be above 30% in all the 24 wards. But ideally, for a good democracy, a 50% and above is always a good threshold to still say that our wheels of democracy are functioning and are turning, where the majority of those registered in the ward are participating and choosing a ward councillor for their geographic area.
Now, one can say we probably saw the biggest in size as far as by-elections go, by-election earlier in November. And I'm sure there are a number of lessons learned from that particular process that you're applying now, particularly as far as COVID-19 protocols are concerned. What are you tweaking? What have you made better? And how does that improve the whole voting experience and the safety thereof?
Certainly, the by-election in November provided us with a very good platform to learn a number of things. And around COVID-19 protocols, we learned a few things. One of those was how we communicate with special votes applicants about the dress code of our personnel when they come and administer special votes. This time we had a better reception at homes, either than the experiences of November, where some voters thought that we were health officials coming to do something unexpected in the home. So this time we were better received. Secondly, we have better trained and briefed on the social distancing within the voting station. Obviously, the cooperation of political parties is quite key, and we made sure in our engagement with the political parties last week that we have a commitment from them to ensure that social distancing is meaningful in also the tables outside the voting stations, but also the party agents who are observing the process within the voting station throughout the day. So there are quite a number of lessons that we are learning as we go and as we start to prepare for the general election of local government later next year.
Yeah. Now, as far as your scheduling is concerned, this is, of course, to address a backlog as far as these by-elections are concerned, brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. How far are you in addressing that backlog?
In terms of the backlog, this by-election tomorrow helps us to be on time. And from here onwards, we will be dealing with vacancies as they occur. However, we still have 3 wards in Tshwane municipality, the metro, where we have 3 vacancies that have been outstanding for a long time, given also the litigation and other issues relating to the dissolution that were taking place there. Those by-elections will continue in January, and that will then be ensuring that we are on time with all by-elections in the country, and we will be seeing the process through. In terms of legal prescription, 6 months before the general elections, we must cease by-elections. But we are now where we are comfortable in terms of the backlog.
Let's talk about the Electoral Law Amendment Bill. It was all the rage in Parliament this week. Why is it necessary that you periodically have this review of the Electoral Act?
Well, if you look at the Electoral Commission Act, it does mandate us to propose amendments of the law as we experience elections. And as we go through elections, we identify certain gaps in the law and we propose those to the legislature. Secondly, we do identify areas where we need to modernize the electoral management, and we propose amendments in relation to that. So it is a mandate and a duty for the Electoral Commission to continuously advise the Parliament and the legislature where there are gaps in law for the sole purpose of ensuring free and fair elections for the Republic of South Africa.
Yeah. Now, for the public, of course, who are about to engage in the public participation process, particularly when it comes to these amendments, what would you say are the benefits in as far as the changes are concerned? I know one of the big issues come election time is whether or not I can vote in the station where I'm not registered, or maybe I could be visiting, there could be a family emergency, and I could be in another province. Can I still vote? And that has always been an issue. Does this amendment address those kinds of issues?
It does, but from a different angle. First, for local government elections, you vote where you are registered and where you reside. And the reason for that is because we are electing ward representative, the ward councillor. So you have to be a resident of that ward to be able to vote for the councillor of that ward. So for local government, the environment is always very strict. Where we had a little bit of an open arrangement was with national and provincial elections, which allowed you to present your proof of registration at a voting station and request to be allowed to vote. Now, the amendment we've proposed comes after the experience of 2019 in particular, where the numbers of voters moving voting stations were quite high, but it also created room for allegations of possible double voting to surface. And in order to close that loop, we are saying, yes, that provision is not being taken away, but it will require a voter to pre-apply for the administration of their vote outside of where they are registered. So in a sense, we're just limiting a bit the open arrangement that we had in those provisions.
So that pre-application, would it be something similar to how you apply for a special vote? Is it not adding more admin to the work that you're doing?
Yes, it is adding more administration on our part, but it would be similar to applying for a special vote. There'll be a time prescribed for you to lodge your application to vote elsewhere, and we will then arrange for you to be received at that particular venue. When we look at elections, we obviously have to keep the underlying values of transparency, fairness, and ensuring the accuracy of the outcome of the election. And keeping those three in mind, it was necessary that we find a limitation of what was now an open provision and suspect to abuse and misuse.
What's the rationale and the thinking around the amendment to the determination of the number of seats in the legislature? I know this is a hot potato one, certainly, that sparked a little bit of debate.
We have the number of seats in legislatures were designated in our elections of 1994 and had not been reviewed despite the changes in population numbers and also the increase in the voter population. And given the criteria of how the seats were determined, it was necessary to revise a number of provinces. And it was not possible to do so unless you amend the constitutional provisions that allow you to do so. Whereas in municipalities, every 5 years, the demarcation board takes into account the changes in the population density in every ward and municipality to accommodate the criteria given for a councillor to represent in terms of population numbers. So every 5 years, in terms of the demarcation processes of municipalities, there would be a revision as the demarcation board announced the final ward boundaries last week.
Right. Now, the NCOP saying that they would not compromise as far as the public participation process is concerned. When considering all the constraints and the limitations of the work that is being done under the pandemic, we know we're seeing a little bit of a surge in other places, particularly in the Eastern Cape. Are you still confident that you would still be able to meet your deadline for the local government elections next year?
We hope so. Obviously, the process is managed and administered by the legislature, the national legislature, as well as the NCOP. So we would, in cooperation with them, be looking at the appropriate platforms for public consultation. Obviously, when the portfolio committee also did public consultations, there were a number of submissions that were made, a significant number of them, which we've had to respond to at the portfolio committee. And we do hope that the NCOP will have a similar success when they run their process in the coming period.
All right, IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawethu Mosery, pleasure once again to talk to you this evening. Thank you for joining us on the Newsfeed Late Night.